In this video, I am going to show you how to warp a heart frame. You will need a wrapped heart frame, some warp thread, and some scissors. If you purchased the Heart Project kit from Kayma Co, all of these supplies will be in the box that was shipped to you. If you would like to purchase the heart kit, follow the link in the comment section and you can go ahead and get one yourself. To begin, we're going to take our warp thread and we're going to tie a knot at the very bottom of the heart. Make sure when you are tightening the knot that you have tightened it in between two of the cotton string place holds. That way it's less visible. Once you are sure of that, go ahead and tie as many knots as you feel comfortable. I like to tie 3 to 4 just to make sure that my warp thread is extra secure. When you are done tying the knots, go ahead and get situated. What I like to do is take the warp thread, you want to take that across and you want to make sure it is on top of the metal frame. You want to make sure that it is about the same level over. And once you have done that, go ahead and wrap your warp around the frame. Put it between two of the cotton string place holds and wrap it around again just to keep it extra tight. Please notice that my finger is currently holding the warp thread tight that I have on the metal frame. Now you're going to take your warp thread and you want it to go over the metal frame. I'm going to go ahead here and count about 4 cotton string places over, and that's where I am going to again wrap the warp string around the frame, and then I'll wrap it around one more time just to keep it in place. Now that that's secure, I'm going to take my warp thread over the metal frame. I will count 4 cotton string places over, and that is where I'm going to repeat this process of wrapping the warp thread around the frame and then around the frame one more time. In doing this twice, it's helping to keep the string extra tight, so that's why I prefer to do that. Now that that warp thread is secure, I will again pull it across and over the frame. I will count 4 spaces. However, in this case, the knot from wrapping the frame is in the way, so I'm just going to go ahead and eyeball it and wrap my warp thread around the metal frame twice where it seems like it should go. As you continue this process, remember every time you pull your warp thread across the frame, you want your warp thread to go over the frame and then wrap it around. Here you'll see that the knot is kind of in the way, so I'm not able to go over 4 cotton string spaces, but what I'll do is I will wrap the warp thread around just after the knot. And this is pretty uniform, so don't worry too much about it. As long as your warp thread is about the same distance apart, then you'll be fine. Go ahead and continue this process until you reach the curve of the heart. Once you've hit that final curve to your heart, you will one more time do the same process of wrapping the warp thread around the frame. Instead of pulling the warp string across to the other side, we are going to go ahead and pull it across to where the middle of the heart is. This process is going to be almost identical to what we've been doing. It is slightly uncomfortable. You'll notice that even I'm having a hard time holding the frame. That's okay. Instead of pulling our warp thread around the frame to the right of where our warp thread is, you want to put it to the left. Wrapping to the left of your warp string is a critical step because it's going to help keep that warp string in place. So now that I've wrapped my thread around the frame a few times, I will go back across the frame the same that we've been doing this whole time. But when I go to wrap my warp thread around the frame, I will again go to the left of the string. Like I mentioned before, going to the left of your warp string is very important in keeping your warp thread tight, secure, and in the exact place that you want it to be. So now we will pull our warp thread across and over our metal frame again. And when we go to wrap the string around our frame, we will go to the left of our warp string and do that a few times just to keep it in place. Bring your warp thread up again and across the frame. The further that you get along on the curve, the more you'll notice how important it is to wrap to the left of the warp string to help keep your warp thread in place. Looking at what we have remaining, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring the warp thread across the frame one more time. Once we get here, we don't need all of this extra warp string, so I will cut off the amount that I feel like I still need. I'm going to pick the place on the frame where I want the warp thread to finally go. I'm going to bring the warp thread to the left of the string, and I'm going to wrap it around the frame a few times. Once I do that, I will go ahead and I will tie multiple knots to that last warp thread, which will keep our final warp thread completely in place, sturdy, and it'll be ready for us to weave on. Now that we've completed that side, we will need to do the same process to the remaining part of our frame that hasn't been warped. So make sure you're on the same side that you've been warping this whole time, because some of these knots you want to be on the back side of your frame. So here I'm going to pick a spot that we would have pulled the thread across to, and I will go ahead and tie a few knots to keep the warp thread in place and secure right here. Once our knot is secure, we're going to go ahead and pull our warp thread across the frame to the center of the heart, where we are going to repeat the same exact process that we did last time. Again, holding the frame is going to be a little uncomfortable, but as long as you are pulling the warp thread across tight and then wrapping your thread around to the left of the string, then it's all good. Go ahead and repeat this process until you have finished warping your frame. Congratulations, you have just finished the hardest part about weaving on a metal frame, which is warping the frame. You're now ready to weave. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you'd like to see more, please subscribe to Kayma Co.